Dr. Lee Sanella wrote in his book, The Kundalini Experience, a new center, presently dormant in the average man or woman, has to be activated, and a more powerful stream of psychic energy must rise into the head from the base of the spine to enable the human consciousness to transcend the normal limits. This is the final phase of the present evolutionary impulse in man. The cerebrospinal system of man has to undergo a radical change, enabling consciousness to transcend the limits of the highest intellect. Here reason yields to intuition, and revelation appears to guide the steps of humankind. This mechanism, known as Kundalini, is the real cause of all so-called spiritual and psychic phenomena, the biological basis of evolution and development of personality, the secret origin of all esoteric and occult doctrines, the master key to the unsolved mystery of creation, the inexhaustible source of philosophy, art, and science, and the fountainhead of all religious faiths past, present, and future. I have personally been training and teaching various forms of yoga, including Kundalini, Pranayama, and Hatha for 2 decades, and can attest to the many benefits enjoyed by dedicated practitioners. Regular yoga practice has been proven to relieve stress, general body aches, pains, anxiety, and depression, increase stamina, lung capacity, core strength, mindfulness, mental clarity and focus, improve posture, poise and patience, promote longevity and cellular regeneration, boost energy levels, elevate mood, release happiness, endorphins, improve digestion, assimilation, and elimination, aid in deeper sleep, and elicit the relaxation response. Beyond these benefits gained by practitioners of all forms of yoga, the pinnacle state and intended achievement of the specific discipline known as Kundalini Yoga is the rising of this energy from the base of the spine to the top of the head in what is termed a Kundalini experience, or a Kundalini Awakening. At the age of 25, after training in yoga for 7 years, and during a particularly diligent stint where I was practicing several hours daily, one fateful afternoon, I had the extreme pleasure of experiencing a Kundalini Awakening myself. So what is meant by a Kundalini experience or Kundalini Awakening? Some signs and symptoms of experiencing a typical Kundalini Awakening include fiery or electrical sensations rising up the spinal column, internal sounds like a hum, buzz, or ringing in one's ears, body shaking, jerking, or convulsions, severe emotional swings from extreme bliss to inconsolable sadness, personal and interpersonal realizations and revelations, visual and auditory hallucinations or hypersensitivities, and waves of intense joy, contentment, and fulfillment. These initial effects of successfully awakening Kundalini are short-lived, however, and generally appear and disappear again within a number of hours. Under proper spiritual guidance and with adequate physical preparation, the entire process should be very positive and beneficial, but without the necessary guidance and preparedness, Kundalini awakening too early can have detrimental effects as well. Dr. Lawrence Edwards, founder of the Kundalini Support Organization, stated, "The purification process of this energy transformation can bring up latent disease, muscle spasms, joint problems, and digestive problems. People can go through all kinds of things, hot flashes and sweats, numbing sensations, all kinds of things that can happen that aren't the most pleasant. Luckily, nowadays there are dozens of excellent books and countless trained teachers available to safely and effectively guide initiates in the raising of Kundalini, so that with adequate preparation, such negative experiences need not be risked or endured. On the contrary, a proper Kundalini awakening can and should be one of the most positive, fulfilling, and satisfying experiences ever, with after effects that last a lifetime." Tantra teacher Cara Leah Grant wrote that, "When Kundalini awakens, a person may experience deeper empathy with others, and this empathy can almost become telepathic. There is greater sensitivity, higher energy levels, sometimes psychic abilities or deep knowing. Aging can appear to slow down. Creativity and charisma can increase, as can internal peace and knowing. There is a sense of being part of all that is. The greater mysteries of life are no longer mysteries." There are various systems and exercises within Kundalini Yoga which prepare the body for and aim to induce the Kundalini awakening process. Exactly how and when each individual will successfully achieve it depends on several subjective factors, making the journey different for everyone. In general, however, The process takes a number of years and involves advanced stretching, particularly of the spinal column, pranayama deep breathing practices, vipassana meditation, a plant-based diet, water fasting, enemas or colonics, saltwater sinus cleansing with neti pot, chastity or complete celibacy, and several other specific austerities and practices. One of the main prerequisites for unlocking Kundalini, and the biggest obstacle I have found for most students, is physically stretching, loosening, decompressing, relaxing, and cracking every vertebrae in their spine, and ultimately, every joint in their body. In fact, it was through that very pursuit that I personally stumbled upon initiating my own Kundalini experience. I had heard of Kundalini Yoga, and even incorporated some of its techniques into my daily hatha and pranayama practice, but at the time had never heard the term Kundalini Awakening or Kundalini experience. Thankfully, I actually managed to trigger a complete and safe awakening without any negative consequences and without the guidance of a personal instructor. Since then, I have learned much more about the process and helped many of my own yoga students achieve similar results. During my hatha training, I began noticing that as I stretched and loosened my back through various poses, eventually and inevitably, once each section of my spine had decompressed and relaxed thoroughly enough, I would be rewarded with a new crack or pop. By this I mean the kind of joint cracking, all popping, which chiropractic doctors perform on their patients. The difference being that when gradually stretched and loosened over time through yoga, until each vertebrae naturally cracks on its own, rather than being forced by a chiropractor, the experience feels like receiving a master key unlocking a door in your spine, because you gain the ability forever thereafter to comfortably crack each vertebrae yourself. Scientifically speaking, the cracking sound results from releasing synovial gases from articular capsules. Synovial fluid lubricates each joint in the body, and through movement over time causes bubbles of synovial gas to form. When the joint is cracked, the articular capsule is stretched sufficiently to release the gas and allow it to return as synovial fluid. After a few hours, synovial gas bubbles will begin forming again, and the joint can be cracked again. If you have never cracked a joint before, and especially if forced, it can be a fairly unpleasant or even painful experience. But if properly prepared through yogic practice and allowed to naturally pop through specific poses, cracking your joints is incredibly relaxing and simultaneously invigorating. Conflicting with what your mother may have told you, joint cracking is not unhealthy, nor does it cause any permanent swelling or other problems. Quite the contrary, joint cracking is a very healthful and beneficial practice, especially when each joint is slowly stretched over time until naturally occurring. When I first began practicing yoga, however, I had never even cracked my knuckles before. Once I began receiving the skeleton keys to unlock each joint, I really enjoyed the subtle, relaxing energy pulsations that came with every pop and made it a mission to unlock my entire body. It took me several years, but I now possess the master skeleton key to my temple and can crack every single joint, including every vertebrae in my spine and neck. All 3 knuckles on each finger, thumbs, wrists, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, toes, and my personal favorite, the sternum. The fused coccyx and sacrum cannot crack, but the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar vertebra can, with the partially fused lower lumbar vertebra requiring the most body work to unfuse and unlock. Now, as I stated, during this part of my personal yoga journey, I was unfamiliar with the concept of Kundalini Awakening, but had simply noticed and enjoyed the energetic sensation of joint popping so much that I made it a personal challenge to sufficiently stretch and loosen each joint until I could crack my whole body. For me, the final and most difficult vertebra to loosen were the lower lumbars, but I found that by hanging upside down using an inversion table, tree limb or playground bar for spinal decompression, along with perfecting the halasana and kamapidasana poses, allowed me to unlock and crack every unfused vertebrae. Now, for some people, Kundalini may be triggered and rise without necessarily being able to crack every joint in their body. But for me, the moment I unlocked that final vertebrae of my spine was the beginning of my Kundalini experience. I could instantly feel a fiery electrical sensation pulsating at the base of my spine, slowly gaining intensity and beginning to rise higher towards my lower back. I began to sweat, saw visual energy trails, and felt a steady building of euphoria, reminiscent of coming up on a magic mushroom or LSD trip. As the electric fire continued rising towards my heart, I had several deep and transformative revelations about myself and my relationships, which caused extreme emotional fluctuations from sobbing uncontrollably to laughing uncontrollably. When the energy reached my neck and continued ascending, there was a building internal pressure, making it feel like my head was going to explode. Finally, the electrical fire engulfed my entire head torso, and I had the extreme pleasure of experiencing for hours the highest high imaginable without taking any drugs. I laid on my bed euphoric, laughing hysterically, lightly flailing and flopping my arms and legs around, feeling the same kind of body high and hypersensitivity to touch characteristic of the drug, ecstasy. The entire experience was like having the positive effects of all the best drugs in the world hitting you simultaneously and completely naturally. After several hours of perfect bliss, the feeling slowly subsided and normal life returned. But something deep within me changed forever thereafter. Within months, I committed myself to veganism and ahimsa, non-violence, which led me to voluntarism, and ultimately to researching and discovering the conspiratorial control of humanity, outlined ever since in my books and videos. It was then that I dedicated my life to exposing the truth and vowed never to stop my activism until the new world order dies, or I do. Anyone who knew me before and after my Kundalini experience in 2007 would confirm that a radical transformation occurred during this time, where I fully came into my own. I felt debilitating pangs of empathy for the suffering of people in war-torn countries and animals in factory farms. It is this compassion for all sentient beings that led me to become the dedicated vegan truth activist that I am today.